Right now, somewhere in your house, there's probably a coffee cup, a bottle of wine, maybe something stronger. You reach for these things without thinking twice. But here's what's strange. Humans have been chasing altered states of mind for so long that scientists can't even pinpoint when it started. Long before written history, before farming, before permanent settlements, humans were already deliberately seeking out plants that could change how their brains worked. This isn't a modern habit. It's one of the oldest behaviors our species has ever practiced. Let's start with the opium poppy. In 2020, archaeologists working in Israel uncovered residue inside ceramic vessels dating back roughly 3,500 years. Chemical analysis confirmed opium alkaloids. But the plant's use likely goes back much further. Some researchers point to seed remains found in European lake settlements from around 5000 BC, suggesting Neolithic farmers were already cultivating poppies specifically for their effects, not just as food. The Sumerians, thousands of years later, had a name for the poppy that translates roughly to joy plant. They weren't hiding what it did. They were naming it for exactly that reason. Then there's cannabis. In 2019, archaeologists excavating a cemetery high in the Pamir Mountains of western China found wooden burial braziers containing burnt plant residue. When they tested it, they found cannabis compounds at levels far higher than what grows naturally in the wild. That meant someone had been selecting plants specifically bred for their psychoactive strength, and burning them in enclosed wooden chambers, almost certainly to inhale the smoke during funeral rituals. This dates back around 2,500 years. The people doing this weren't stumbling onto it by accident. They understood exactly what they were doing and built ceremonies around it. Psychedelic mushrooms take the story even further back, into territory that's harder to prove but impossible to ignore. In parts of the Sahara, rock art dating back roughly 7,000 to 9,000 years shows humanoid figures covered in dotted patterns, some holding what look like mushrooms in each hand. Researchers who study these sites argue the imagery lines up with the kind of visual patterns people report during psilocybin experiences. It's not definitive proof, but it's one of the oldest visual hints we have that altered states of consciousness were already part of ritual life before agriculture even existed in the region. Move to the Americas, and the evidence gets more concrete. In caves in Texas and northern Mexico, archaeologists have found remains of mezcal beans and peyote buttons in deposits going back nearly 5,000 years. Peyote contains mescaline, a powerful psychoactive compound, and its use wasn't casual. Indigenous groups across what's now the southwestern United States and Mexico built entire spiritual traditions around it, traditions that in some communities are still practiced today, making peyote use one of the longest continuously running ritual practices on the planet. South America has its own chapter. In the Andes, communities were chewing coca leaves at least 8,000 years ago. Traces of coca alkaloids have been found in ancient teeth and in chewed quids preserved at high-altitude archaeological sites. At extreme elevations, where oxygen is thin and the terrain is brutal, coca wasn't primarily about getting high. It suppressed appetite, reduced fatigue, and helped people function. The intoxicating effect existed, but it rode alongside a very practical survival use, which is part of why the practice spread so widely and lasted so long. Then there's ayahuasca, a brew made by combining specific Amazonian vines and leaves that, on their own, do almost nothing. Only when combined in exact proportions do they produce intense visionary effects. Figuring that out required serious plant knowledge, testing combinations across thousands of species in a rainforest with no written records to pass information along. Some ceramic vessels found in the region, dated to around 1,000 years old, show residue consistent with the brew's key ingredients, though many researchers believe the practice is considerably older than the physical evidence that has survived. What ties all of this together is that none of it looked random. These weren't people accidentally eating the wrong berry and stumbling into a strange afternoon. Across completely disconnected parts of the world, with no contact between them, humans independently identified specific plants, tested combinations, refined preparation methods, and built rituals, medicine, and belief systems around the results. Death rites in the mountains of China. Vision quests in the American Southwest. Communal ceremonies in the Amazon. Different continents, different plants, the same underlying drive. So here's the full picture. Roughly 5,000 years ago, coca was already helping people survive at extreme altitude. Around the same time, opium was being grown deliberately, not gathered by chance. About 2,500 years ago, cannabis was being burned in sealed wooden chambers during funerals in Central Asia. And in the deserts of North America, peyote ceremonies were already established well before that. Every one of these practices required real botanical knowledge passed down without books, without labels, without warnings. Someone had to test it first. The next time you glance at a coffee cup or a glass of wine, remember that the impulse behind it is far older than any of those specific substances. Long before humans had language sophisticated enough to write any of this down, they were already searching for plants that could shift their minds, and they were doing it on purpose. We didn't invent the desire to alter consciousness. We just inherited it.